Hello everyone, this is going to be a summary of session number 13 of my Lamentations Flame Princess campaign, set in the town of Pembrooktonshire. So the group had started off being in this room where this strange altar was, that apparently this midwife was using to perform some strange rites with children that she had helped bring into the world. And again, there was skin all over the walls and baby parts. It was very disturbing. And this area that they were in, the skin started to sort of run out on the walls so that the stone masonry was evident behind it after that. And they walked forward into the darkness. And there was straight ahead, left and right, and they just went straight. So Rayhan was starting to notice that his body was healing up faster than it should, probably because of that troll blood that was thrown into his face. So he has that, I guess, a little bit of regeneration properties to him, and a lot of the parts that fill in have that dark red skin. And they also kind of figured out that that droning noise, the various voices that they heard, was around that dark altar. Ramalzi put up his finger, he licked it and put it up into the air, and found a secret door ahead, as well as this other door that was there. And the door that was evident, there were some whispers coming out of it, of some people that were behind it. It sounded like they were trying to set up some sort of ambush, and they weren't being very quiet about it. So eventually they talked to them and got them to come out and try to figure out what they were going to do with each other. These group of men, Ronald Monaghan and William and the old man who never revealed his name, asked whether they knew the woman or if the plumber sent them. And the group learned that the town turned this burial crypt into a poorly designed sewer system. They had heard this woman, the midwife, performing sacrifices or something terrible with lots of screaming children off in the distance, but they didn't really come out to investigate. Apparently they had snuck down while she was out, because the only way they knew of to get down here was through her place. Let's see here, what else? They came down there for the riches that were in the tomb, supposedly, and they had learned that the man had designed this place to keep out grave robbers. They weren't really sure what the woman is up to, but they think she's definitely up to no good. And the group saw statues of Saint MacIver all over the place. And apparently that is one of the saints that the Church of the All prays to and asks for guidance and favors. So the group was saying that maybe they were looking for survivors, and Ronald basically said, do you think that bitch let any of her victims survive? But the group wasn't sure, and they wanted to find out. There were some levers that were up in the first level of this place that this group, Ronald, William, the old man, had turned up, but they really didn't know what it did, and they really didn't find out because they went down the stairs to the second level through this long series of stairs and platforms. Let's see here. Down at the end, there was another secret door that they found. The section that went off to the right, and the other went straight into the left. They chose to go straight into the left. At this point, Ash, the elf, attempted to pick the pockets of the old man, who apparently worships the outer powers. They weren't really sure if he's a magician or perhaps a cleric. They really weren't really even sure what he was, or they didn't really ask too many questions about him. They eventually came up to some alcoves that were filled with statues, stone statues of Saint MacIver. And this is when the old man noticed the pickpocket attempt, because Ash had reached into his bag and pulled out a living rat that bit him in the hand. Apparently these living rats were sacrifices, and the old man trained them, apparently. Let's see here. Out from the alcoves came like a syrupy, dark appendage with dark mist that was coming off the top of it. And Mallow, was slashing at it. Ash was shooting arrows into it. Ramalzi made this illusion of Jonathan Pembroke from the town above that hit into him and ripped its flesh off in sections. Rayhan was hit in the hip, and there was this acidic burn that was there. And William was wrapped up in this slimy, sticky, acidic stuff and yanked into the base of the creature. It's just sort of an amorphous blob of material, and then he was slowly devoured before their very eyes. Rayhan stabbed his torch into the center of the creature, and a hissing sound was heard. He was almost pulled in, but he managed to get himself out. The old man was hit and pulled in, but he managed to get freed when they destroyed the creature. And there was a series of hits and attacks and stabbing, but the final cherry on top was basically Ramalzi shoving his wand and blowing it apart with a lightning bolt. So the old man got shocked and was burned and fell to the ground, but surprisingly he was still alive. During that process, too, the old man had ripped off the head of one of the rats that he had named Ash, because Ash and him sort of had this rivalry where they were sort of having jabs at each other with different things. But that was kind of an ongoing joke through the session. Let's see here. Rayhan, yeah. So Mallow had helped heal some of the things that were done to the old man, since he had burns and acid all over him. The old man kept saying things like, "The outer powers dwell within my soul. I will be all right. But if you wouldn't mind helping me, that would be good." Let's see what else here. Ronald led the group further into the distance. They went down some more stairs, and they said they were looking for the riches. And this is when a disembodied voice was heard of this little girl that was trying to talk to them, and it was singing songs apparently. And they saw signs written on doors like, "You've come so far, but the true test of your skills is yet to come. Grave robber." So they got the feeling that this crypt was designed to keep people out. He wanted to keep his riches, maybe for the hereafter. Who knows? Rayhan disabled a mechanism that caused some trap for not working, and then they moved on. The disembodied voice spoke to them. 1 and 2, 1 and 2, pretty, pretty flowers. 1 and 2, 1 and 2, bleeding on the flowers. Things like that. And they just, sort of hearing this little sing-songy voice, and they kept going on, and they went on these stairs, and they stepped on the 5th one. They heard a click. Somewhere way back in the dungeon, they heard a sliding, grinding sound, and the sound of a heavy stone slamming into another one, like. So this is where they got that sort of dread sensation of being stuck down here, but they didn't go to investigate as of yet. There was more singing. And they kind of thought that these voices were the disembodied souls of all the children that were perhaps sacrificed or tortured. They weren't really sure. They rolled an apple that had a light spell cast on it down these next set of stairs, and it rolled down into the unknown. They came out into a room with no obvious exits, and then they started asking questions to these voices. And there was also this strange sense of swamp smell in the air. Ramalzi began to roll this light apple back and forth, asking questions, like I said. They asked how many there were down here, and then they felt all these hands slapping all over them, even on the bottoms of their feet, which is a very weird sensation when you're standing on the floor. So there were apparently lots of kids that were killed down here, but that was pretty evident from all the skin that was hanging on the walls when they first entered through the midwifery. They said, "The outer powers haven't come for us yet. Mommy says we will go to them someday. New children she brings sometimes. Other strange children she takes back with her, but they're not normal. They're from the outside, and they wear our skins. You better hurry up. Mommy's coming back soon. Why do you still have all of your skin? Does Mommy not like it? Mommy does like the soft skin. Yours must be too rough. Do you know what's going on, Mommy? Do you want to know which way she goes?" Things like that. So they did a lot of talking with them and learned a lot of strange things that apparently they bring. She gives birth to these kids. It helps the mothers give birth, and she takes them down here. Apparently, takes their skin off, takes their corpses somewhere and then brings back other children from outside, whatever that means, back to their mothers. That's kind of what the group was putting together with all this. Ramelzi told them that they were here to watch the children. And they said that they serve him of the lake. And they asked what that meant. They said that our skinless bodies help him. We just sort of dwell here till the outer powers get hungry. So apparently these outer powers get hungry and devour the souls of children. And the group asked them if they were scared of this, because they really didn't seem to be. We were born to be their food, Mummy says. But we get to paint the roses with Mummy sometimes, the pretty flowers with the red paint. Apparently the mother brings buckets of blood, and they basically paint flowers with it. They ask, don't you like flowers, Mr. Redface? To Rayhan, with his troll skin face. But he just sort of ignored them. I think he was kind of creeped out by it. But, yeah. So they were talking a little bit about how the skinless ones were eventually going to go up to the surface and take back what was theirs or what was his, he of the lake. And they also talked about the fact that he of the lake kind of resembles a turtle. And then the gears started to grind a little bit in the characters' heads. That maybe this was the things they had talked and heard about this plumber knowing things down here about a princess and all kinds of strange things like that. So after a long hallway, there was a small room, and there were hundreds of red flowers painted all over the walls and the floor. There was a pit in the center of the room with bloodstains and footprints, but there was nothing in there at the moment. The voice pushed a stone, and another opening opened up. Let's see here. Rayhan was trying to convince the voices to not get upset when they, were tickling the giant turtle with their swords. It was all a game, and they were telling the group that he of the lake likes to breathe fire when he's angry, and that their skinless bodies walk on his back sometimes. And they also talked about how the plumber is nice to them, brings them flowers. Especially to Stella, who used to be his daughter, and he brings a second flower for the daughter that he grew up with. So again, that was sort of that weird idea of his daughter was brought down here to die, but this other strange creature that resembled his daughter, he took home to his house. So they weren't really sure what was going on with the Midnight Wife and what she was doing, but apparently Stella is the plumber's daughter, or at least she was. The voices talked about the other voices, the outer powers voices, and there were 3 of them that dwelled in the cave with he of the lake. And they sort of emanate from the ceiling of the cave. They said, Mommy isn't very happy most of the time, but she seems very devoted to those whose voices are in the cave. She does it all for the voices. This is when Ash felt a section of skin rip off his leg. But the main voice that they had talked to convinced Stella that she shouldn't do that, that this group was nice like the plumber was. So they apparently avoided being skinned. In the next room, they found a large pipe organ, and there were lots of chairs set up. And they tried to play that 1 and 2, 1 and 2, the Pretty Flower song. But this loud shrieking noise filled the room, and half of the characters became deaf. They couldn't hear anything. And they looked inside the organ, and it seemed the thing was a death trap. There were tubes with all kinds of strange liquids and arcane symbols marked on certain strings. So apparently the owner of this place set it up to be played, thinking that the grave robbers would do that, and it might kill them. So they didn't play anymore. Let's see here. And they asked the voices, where does Mommy go? And they showed them and just pushed the door right open. There was no traps, no locks or anything. And inside that doorway, there was this large natural cavern that had a lake in the center of it, and sewage was leaking down from the ceiling. There was a monstrous shell stained with sewage and chunks of flesh literally all over the top of it. There were hundreds of skinless mutated humans, all the way from toddlers up to 40 years of age. and they looked like they were all sacrifices of this midwife. So apparently she's been doing this for a long time. And that, I don't think they got it at the time, but there were about 300 to 400 skinless people around this turtle. And if they thought about the midwife doing this and taking back with her kids from outside and giving them back to the parents, kind of, it should make them think a little bit. So there's all these skinless corpses or skinless people. They weren't really sure actually what they were because they didn't get close enough to see, but they were all around this lake, and in the lake was this shell that was 40 to 50 feet across. There was a peninsula that went out into the lake that had all kinds of arcane markings that were dug up and filled with blood, and there were lots of blood flower drawings all over the place. And they pretty much figured out this is a pretty major threat to the town above. In the cave, some of those dark voices were around them, up in the air, and they were the same voices that they could hear at the altar that was up on the first level. And they began to speak and chant, and their unearthly voices were bouncing off the walls. And it seemed to be about 3 different voices that they heard talking in the darkness. Mallow and Ramalzi saw that there was this triangle on the peninsula, and they associated that with the 3 different voices. The head of the giant turtle then lifted up out of the water and spout flames that licked the ceiling. And then they pretty much just ran for it because there were hundreds of them, and they pretty much couldn't handle that, or the dragon turtle or the turtle, whatever they thought it was. They went down and they ran back to the place where the light apple had rolled down the stairs, and then they decided to go into that other secret door instead of heading back up. They found this sarcophagus with an old decayed corpse in it. They found a secret treasure off to the side, and Ronald at that time was digging around in the corpse of the man, didn't really find anything, ripping him apart. And they asked the voices, the little girl, is there anything they didn't find? These people that you say went over here way back when. And they basically just pushed on the wall, and the stone went in, and inside they found a secret chest. Rayhan looked for traps, he didn't find any, and then Ronald, in his greed, basically tried to get there and open things up with a lock. He didn't check for traps, and then he stiffened up all of a sudden, and then he fell over dead. His arm was swelling up pretty large fashion, and Rayhan was able to open it up now that the trap was no longer there. And inside, instead of finding silver coins or gold coins, they found 10,000 or so copper pennies. Very heavy, big chest, and not worth a lot, but at the same time, it's worth something. They could live a pretty comfortable life even with pennies, that many of them, for a long time. They'll just have to count them out. And that themselves, they kind of figured out was sort of a slight from the person that died down here, like, oh, you're looking for loot, well, have some pennies, On the body of Ronald, they found 2 ornate daggers that had dragons carved on the sides of them, and they figured that Ronald must have stolen those from some other crypt. They seemed like they were professional grave robbers, although this this dungeon had taken out 2 of them so far. The old man was left. They found a map of this very section on the man, and he had all the answers written down to the riddles that were to come. They passed through several doors with very hard questions, but they were very easy to get through with those answers. The end puzzle answer, however, was smudged, so they had to pick between 1 or 2, and Rayhan looked inside the slots and found ones that weren't trapped, and that's the one he picked. In the last room, the true sarcophagus was there, and they found that it had a pressure plate underneath the body that perhaps could open up beneath the corpse. The corpse had some teeth missing. Rayhan stabbed the belly of the corpse, and trying to get down to that hidden doorway or whatever it was, but instead found there were gold coins inside the stomach and intestines of the man. Ash asked, why on earth would you eat gold coins? And everyone else basically said that the coins were probably put there, after he had died. They were discussing the idea of resting in this room when, with the sarcophagus, when they heard the sounds of a bunch of skinless feet coming down the hallway behind them and some sort of ghastly voices speaking. And that's pretty much where we ended the session. So next time we'll get to find out if they fight their way through these skinless horde, or if there's another way out of here, or if they're trapped. And this is the end of the campaign. We shall see. Thanks for listening, everybody. If I could figure out how to turn this off. All right, take care.